Hey there, and welcome to The Bridge Online. My name's Angie, and I'm so glad you decided to join us today. Well, fall is here, and you know what that means? It is time for sweater weather. And there is nothing that makes me happier than cozying up in a nice warm sweater on a cool day. Except maybe perhaps knowing that there are new people in the audience watching church for the very first time today. And if that is you, I encourage you to click the New Here button on your screen. We want to send you a free gift. Now, before we jump into today's message, our band is going to come up and sing a couple of awesome songs. Please join me as we sing.
Bring the pain that you've been hiding. Bring your scars and bring your shame. Every failure, every secret. Bring your fear that things won't change. Bring your dreams and bring your worries. Highest highs, lowest lows. Every hope you pin your heart on. Every hurt you can't let it go. To the one whose name is Healer, to the one who came to save, to the one whose love is stronger than the power of the grave. Come and raise a hallelujah to the God who overcomes. Lift your hands, lift your heart to the one. There is joy and sweet forgiveness where the fount of mercy flows. Child of heaven, wait no longer. Hear the call, come back home. To the one whose name is Healer, to the one who came to save, to the one whose love is stronger than the power of the grave. Come and raise your hallelujah to the God who overcomes. Lift your hands, lift your heart to the one. He is grace, He is peace, He is light, He redeems. Lift your voice, lift your eyes, give your praise, give your life to the one whose name is Healer, to the one who came to save, to the one whose love is stronger than the power of the grave. Come and raise a hallelujah to the God who overcomes. Lift your hands, lift your heart to the one. Come and lift your hands, lift your heart to the one. Come and lift your heart to the one. I am surrounded on every side. Can't see the light of day, but I am persuaded beyond all hope you won't let go of me. I stake my claim on every word you say. You will not be late. I will sing through fire and thunder, 'cause you are on my side. I trust you with my life. I know my story, it isn't over. Even against all odds, you are a faithful God. You're a faithful God. promises will hold together, and I will dwell in the hope of your love forever. I am convinced that your promises will hold together, and I will dwell in your love, and I will sing through fire and thunder, 'cause you are on my side. I trust you with my life. I know my story, it isn't over, even against all odds. Oh, you are a faithful God. That's who you are. Oh, you are a faithful God. Oh, you're faithful God.
Well, amen. If you're around with us just a few weeks ago, you may have had the privilege and the honor of watching 3 of our students go public with their faith through baptism. These 3 girls are student leaders in our Bridge Kids wing, and we even had their whole class come down to watch them take this next step. It really was an awesome morning, and we want to do it all over again on October 30th. If you are a student or an adult and you're ready to make this next step in your faith journey, we encourage you to visit bridgechurches.ca/top3, and there'll be a link for you to sign up for baptism. We'll also be hosting a baby dedication on October the 23rd. So if you have young children or babies that you wish to dedicate to the Lord, visit that same link. There's a spot for you to sign up for that also. Well, today we are jumping into part 2 of our Changing Lanes series, where Scott is going to share the first thing out of 6 that are driving us forward to our tomorrow together. But today doesn't have to be the end of the conversation. We want you to be able to go deeper with your faith and connect with your friends as it relates to Sunday's messages. And this is why we are going to be offering a discussion guide for each of the episodes in our Changing Lanes series. If you wish to get that delivered straight to your inbox, visit bridgechurches.ca/top3. There's a link for you to sign up for that there. Well, without further ado, here's Scott with part 2 of Changing Lanes.
What would you do? What would you do? Well, as always, it's so great to be with you today, wherever you are. Hopefully you're not on the side of the road somewhere, but it is so great to be with you wherever you are and whenever this is for you. Whether you're with us live right now, or maybe you're watching later on demand, or listening via our podcast, however you're tuning in right now, my name is Scott, and I'm so thankful to have the opportunity to share with you today. Well, last week we kicked off this fall season and this series by talking about where we're going together as a church. Together, we looked out the windshield to tomorrow, and my hope is that by the end of this series, you will carpool with us so that we will get to our tomorrow together. If you missed last week for one reason or another, or if you're joining us for the first time today, either way, I'd encourage you to go to our webpage and watch last week's message, because it really was the launching point for this season and this series, and it will put what we talk about today and the content of the rest of this series in better context. Now, today and over the remaining parts of this series, what I want to do is I want to take some time and I want to focus in a little more and talk about 6 specific things that will become more prominent in our approach as we continue on to our destination. The destination that Jesus mapped out for us. What we said last week was that our destination, it was actually a mandate, or it was a command or a commission that was given by Jesus himself. It wasn't up for debate when he revealed it to his disciples then, and it certainly isn't up for debate for us today. The destination for us is to go and make disciples, go and make followers of Jesus. That Jesus pointed out the windshield and he told the disciples that their destination was to go out into the world and make disciples. That was the destination that he gave to the church and the destination that we are headed towards together today as a church. What Jesus commissioned his disciples with all those years ago has always served as our mission as a church. And the way that we express it here is that our mission is to lead people into a growing relationship with Jesus Christ. Our mission is to lead people into a growing relationship with Jesus Christ. That's our mission. That's our goal. That's our destination. Always has been and always will be. And while a global pandemic caused our church community to take a detour and look inwardly and internally for a time, we are changing lanes and we're getting back into that far left lane so that we can reach our maximum speed and go further, faster. And as we do, we're refocusing on what we do, why we do it, and who we do it for. If you've ever traveled with family or friends for an extended period of time, one of the best parts isn't just getting where you're going, it's also the stories that you hear along the way and the stories that you can tell as a result of traveling together. I love that part of road trips. I always have. I can't tell you how many times my grandparents told me stories, awesome stories in the car. Stories that made me laugh, stories that made me think, stories that I still hold on to this day. And I find myself these days doing the exact same thing when my wife Lisa and I travel together, or when I go northwest of Toronto and pick up my daughter Emma when she gets to come home to be with us. You see, when you travel together, there are so many stories to tell. So with that in mind, as we continue on in our journey together, I wanted to take this time to tell you a couple of stories. The first one happened the week before the pandemic caught our church and the whole world off guard and had us secluded in our homes and buying too much toilet paper. See, I led a conversation in our Bridge Kids Theater here on our Canada campus with our staff, our advisory team, which is our church's board, and a few others, and we gathered together to talk about our church. And the question I asked of that group led to hours of discussion. And the question was simple, but the answer was not. What I asked them was, what makes our church our church? What makes our church our church? It's an important question to ask and answer. And what I was really trying to find out, or the question that I was really asking was, what is our church's culture? That's what I was asking. What is our church's culture? What is our church's DNA? What is our organizational attitude? You see, our mission is our destination. Our vision is the star we follow that guides us, and our culture is who we are as we go. And every church has a culture. It may not be defined, but every church has one, and so does every business. Again, it may not be defined, but every business has a culture, and so does every family. Some families are quiet and reserved. Other families are loud and affectionate. Some families do their own thing, and other families do everything together. It's who we are. It's what we value together. It's not always defined, but it's what defines who you are and what you do. It's not always tangible or said audibly, but the culture is visible and noticeable. It's who we are as a family, as an organization, as a church community. Yes, we're diverse and individual, but as a collective, we have a culture. So as we gathered in that room, I wanted to hear what people saw, what they heard and felt, so that we could identify together not what or who we want to be, but who we are. What is it over time that we have clearly shown we value that makes up who we are? That's what I wanted to know. That's what we wanted to find out. I wanted to be able to identify our culture so that we can articulate our culture, so that I could communicate to our staff, board, and volunteers, both present and future, and to you and others who attend and wonder about our church. I wanted to be able to articulate, this is who we are, and this is what we value together. I wanted to be able to articulate our values so that others could embrace our culture, so that anyone and everyone could embrace who we are and what we value and be part of it as we go together. And one of the best ways to help others embrace a culture is to celebrate a culture. Celebrate it. It's been said that what is celebrated is repeated. And as we go to our tomorrow together, we want to celebrate our culture, which helps us nurture our culture. You see, culture is to an organization what soil is to a garden or an engine is to a car. You have to take care of it. You have to nurture it. And as you do, if we do, we can then transfer our culture, that I can pass it along to others. And so can you. And together, one of the reasons we needed to identify our culture is so that we could guard and protect it together. That meeting was full of passionate people passionate people? And the answers were, they were insightful, thoughtful, they were touching. The responses were heartfelt, and many had stories attached to them. Stories of what people saw and felt that caused them to conclude and feel what they did. And while the whiteboard we were working on was just overwhelmed with words and lines, what became obvious really quickly was that the thoughts and the dots could be connected, that there were themes, that in many cases we were seeing and saying the same things, but in different ways. That this overwhelming list of responses could actually be consolidated. So that began the process of categorizing these themes and getting to the heart of the responses. And that process took many, many months and many conversations and revisions, because we really needed to capture the values of the culture that we all saw and felt in a way that we could articulate. There were well over 50 words or descriptions used in that initial meeting, and that process of consolidation and revisions has left us with 6 core values that we have as a church. 6 values that make up our organizational culture or attitude, who we are as we go to our tomorrow together. These are not prescriptive, they are descriptive. This isn't who or what we want to be, this is who we have been and who we need to be going forward. We wanted to define it again so that we could articulate, embrace, celebrate, nurture, transfer, and protect our culture, individually and collectively. So, with that as a bit of the backstory for the rest of the series, I'm going to share these 6 cultural values with you. And my guess is, like those in that initial meeting, whether this is your first time with us or you've just started attending recently, or whether you've been with us for years and years, my guess is that you've seen these values, you've seen who we are, what our culture is expressed in a lot of different ways. But it's important for us to identify it, because a culture that isn't defined can't be articulated, embraced, celebrated, nurtured, transferred. And if you don't know what your culture is, you don't know how to protect it. So these are in no particular order, but all 6 are essential. All 6 make up who we are as we go to our tomorrow together. To get us started, I want to tell you another story. And this story is told to us by 2 people, 2 authors named Mark and Luke. Each of these men wrote a book that chronicles the life and the ministry of Jesus, and these 2 books, along with 2 other books written by Matthew and John, they make up the Gospels, the first 4 books of the New Testament. In his account of Jesus' life and ministry, Mark tells the story of a woman that did something insignificant, yet something that caught Jesus' attention, even though it made little to no sense. Jesus and his disciples had been traveling. They had been carpooling together. And when they arrived back in Jerusalem, they made their way to the temple. And when they got there, Jesus was cornered, as often happened to him. He was cornered and questioned by the religious leaders, the chief priests, the elders, and other teachers of the law. And again, this wasn't new to him. They were continually trying to get Jesus to slip up. They're trying to trick him and trap him because they were intimidated and threatened by his following and the momentum it was gaining. After frustrating them with his responses, Jesus begins teaching them using stories in the first part of Mark chapter 12. Jesus spoke about a landowner who had a beloved vineyard which he had leased out to some tenant farmers. And when the time of the harvest came, this owner sent one of his servants to collect his share of the harvest, but the farmers who didn't own the land actually beat up the servant of the owner and sent him away with nothing but a beating. The owner sent more people repeatedly, but they too were either beaten or killed. So finally, the man decides to send his own son, thinking that he will get greater respect from the tenants. But instead, they think and talk among themselves, if we kill him, we'll keep everything for ourselves. And so they grabbed him. They grabbed the son of the landowner. They grabbed him and they murdered him, and they threw his body out in the vineyard. They killed the son of the one who owned the land that they harvested. And there was silence. Eyes were looking down and kind of looking around, and then Jesus asked a question. What do you suppose the owner of this vineyard will do? Eyes got big, more silence. No one raised their hands to answer. It was just painful, awkward silence. And Jesus said, I'll tell you, he will come and kill those farmers and lease the vineyard to others. Eyes got really big, and Jesus leaned in, and then he digs. He digs into their scriptures, into their stomachs as he asks, didn't you ever read this? The stone that the builders reject has now become the cornerstone. And my guess is you know what Jesus was saying with the story he told. And so did his audience. The religious leaders, they wanted to arrest Jesus because they realized that he was telling the story against them. It was about them, that they realized that they were the wicked farmers he was talking about. But they were afraid of the crowd, so they left him and they went away. They went away, but they didn't give up. They went away and they sent some of the Pharisees, members of a Jewish social movement, and some of the Herodians. They were a political group made up primarily of Jews. The religious leaders, they sent these Pharisees and Herodians to trap Jesus by asking him questions about paying taxes to Caesar. Now, it may have been that they hoped that Jesus would say that they shouldn't pay taxes so that they could accuse him of treason, but Jesus was smart. Jesus was smarter than them, and he was on to them, and he told them to give what belongs to Caesar, and give what belongs to God, to God. The Sadducees, the wealthy upper class, they were next, and they asked Jesus a wild one. They basically asked Jesus, if a woman was married multiple times on earth, whose wife would she be in heaven? Now, you can talk that one over during lunch today, but basically different people came at him with all kinds of questions, all with the intent of getting him to compromise himself so that they could get rid of him. I mean, think about it. They were in the presence of Jesus, and they wanted not to honor him, but to get rid of him. So finally, he's had enough, and he tells the people, beware of these teachers of the law, for they like to parade around in flowing robes, and they like to get all the respectful greetings when they walk into the marketplaces, and oh, how they love, the best seats of honor and the head table at banquets. I mean, they love the attention, they love it, and yet they shamelessly cheat widows out of their property and then pretend to be pious or devout by making long prayers in public. Because of this, Jesus said, they will be more severely punished. So the temple is abuzz. Tensions are high. Jesus is frustrated, maybe even annoyed. I don't know. I mean, he's in a temple, the temple. And those he has come to give his life for aren't reverent, they're ignorant. And more than that, they are blatant in their attempts to discredit him and to destroy him. He tries to shake it off, and Mark tells us that he goes and he sits down near the collection box in the temple. And he goes on to tell us that he watched as the crowds dropped in their money. Now, you have to understand or try to imagine what he's been through and what he's thinking and feeling as he sits down in this moment. And if you do, as you do, then when you read the rest of this story, in light of that, when I read this story, I do what I often do. I try to watch a movie in my mind. I try to imagine the setting, the sounds, the colors. Was it a cool morning or hot afternoon? I don't know. I try to see the faces of the people. I try to hear what they're saying. Jesus was sitting there watching, and I wonder, what was it he saw? Well, Mark tells us that many rich people put in their large amounts. That's what he saw. And as I watch this unfold in my mind, I see these huge trumpet-shaped drains. Rich men are taking turns walking up and dumping their money into them. I see the pride in their eyes as other men not only see how much they're dumping in, but hear how much they're dumping in. You see, scholars agree that these drains would have been made of a material similar to what we call brass today. So imagine seeing and hearing buckets and buckets of change flowing down a giant tuba and into a massive wooden chest. That's what Jesus saw and heard as he sat there. Now, these men weren't there to be generous. They were there to get applause. And I can see it in their faces and hear it in their voices as they were celebrating their wealth as opposed to actually being generous with it. I mean, they were in the right place and they were doing the right thing, but they were missing the point of it all completely. All of this, the ignorance, the arrogance, Jesus was surrounded by all of it, and you have to imagine what Jesus is feeling and thinking as he sits there. What's the point? Nobody gets it. I mean, he's disturbed, maybe even disgusted, and then it's interesting that then, after all this, and in the midst of all of this, Jesus sighs, and then a poor widow came and dropped in 2 small coins. Tink, tink. Mark tells us that the coins that she dropped in were small. Other translations tell us that these coins were actually what was known as a mite. Now, the Greek word translated as mite is lepton, and this coin, this mite, was the smallest coin used in the New Testament time. And at the time of Mark's writing, a mite was worth 1/64 of a denarius, which was a day's wage for a common worker. Now, today, the estimated value of a mite is about 1/8 of a cent. So this woman didn't have 2 cents to her name. Literally. Now, I kept reading this story over and over again this week because I found that in these short, obscure stories, there's always something of great significance hiding. For me, it's kind of like looking for something in the fridge. Now, you may not know this, but I actually have what is referred to in the medical community as man eyes, okay? So if it isn't right in front of me, I don't see it. Now, apparently, my wife tells me that if you move some things, you can find things that aren't obvious or in plain sight. At least that's what Lisa tells me. But the same is true here. That if you don't move some things or if you don't look hard, you can miss something really important. I read this over and over again, and it wasn't long before it finally hit me. One word that changes the whole story. Now, it may be obvious to you, but I was oblivious to it and its implications. This woman is a widow. Now, in today's world, a woman being a widow is sad, but it's not as debilitating as it was being a widow in Jesus' day. Then, women were reliant on men in a way they aren't today. For her to be a widow meant she would have been left alone. She doesn't earn money. Anything she would have been given to her out of charity. And imagine a life like that. Imagine not knowing where your next meal was going to come from. Imagine not wanting it to rain because you'd have nowhere to go and to stay dry. Imagine a life alone with no one around you to make you feel safe, secure, needed, or even loved for that matter. She's a widow. She's been left alone and she's on her own, and somehow she came into possession of 2 mites, an insignificant amount of money, and yet she dropped them in the box for all to see, for all to hear. And I wonder, did she think of all the things that she could purchase with that money? Did she consider hiding it away for a time of greater need? Neither Mark nor Luke, the other one who tells us this story, neither tell us what she considered in her mind and in her heart. What we do know is that her ultimate decision was to bring all she had to the temple. What we do know is that what she did got Jesus' attention. Jesus called his disciples to him and he said, I tell you the truth, this poor widow has given more than all the others who are here making contributions. The widow gave not because she could, but because she wanted to. It was a sacrifice of love similar to that of a man giving his life for a fallen world. You see, this woman got it, and she got Jesus' attention. You see, as hard as it is for some of us to understand, unlike us, Jesus is not interested in things. Possessions and money don't gain or get his attention. It wasn't what she put in the box that got his attention. It was the heart behind what she got and gave that got Jesus' attention. Generosity isn't linked or defined by an amount, or this woman wouldn't even been noticed. Generosity is so much more. What is that? That is the question. And Jesus answered it. He calls his young friends and he says, this woman has given more than anyone or everyone else, for they gave a tiny part of their surplus. But she, poor as she is, she has given everything she had to live on. This woman gave all she had, not what she had left, all that she had to live on. After those 2 coins dropped in the box, that was it. There was nothing else. There was no money in the bank. There were no credit cards to use. There were no stocks, assets, or Bitcoin to liquidate. Her generosity meant that there was no food for that day unless someone else was generous on her behalf. Her generosity meant she would have to live on someone else's generosity. She didn't give because she could. She gave 2 because she had to. This woman got Jesus' attention because she got it. She got that generosity isn't a financial issue. It's a faith issue. The value of generosity isn't about what percentage of the church budget you support, but what amount of your budget you use to communicate that you belong to God, that you are his, and that you understand you play a part in what he is doing in and through his church. The original reason why God instituted sacrifice was because it was supposed to mean something spiritual, not something tangible, practical, or financial. It was communicating something with something. But 2 coins? 2 coins? I mean, come on, what good is that going to do? That's what I wondered, practically. But to Jesus, it's clear that it wasn't what she gave that made a difference. It was that she recognized that she was a part and had a part to play in making a difference. More than that, the other question I have is, why didn't Jesus stop her? I mean, I highly doubt that anyone else even noticed her. They're probably too busy showing off for each other. I also doubt that anyone would have noticed or felt the impact, the actual impact of what she gave. But again, she got something that no one else there got, despite all their wealth and success. I mean, they had everything that she didn't have externally, and yet she possessed something internally that no one else had. And Jesus knew how much she had. He knew how much she had, and he could have easily stopped her, but he didn't. I mean, she would have been wise, right? She would have been wise to save the money or buy bread with it, but to Jesus, it seems as though there is something spiritual. There's a spiritual dynamic to generosity, even when it costs, and even when it doesn't make sense. And so, instead of stopping her, instead of assuring her it wasn't necessary. I mean, we don't even know if he spoke to her at all. What we do know is that he spoke to his disciples and he told them that this woman gave more than anyone else. And I promise you it had nothing, absolutely nothing to do with money. She was communicating something internal with something external. And what she communicated, what she demonstrated is one of our values as a church. We value it because Jesus values it. We value it because we believe it is essential to being in a growing relationship with Jesus, and essential to building irresistible bridges between unchurched people and Jesus Christ, and essential to leading people into a growing relationship with Him. We value irrational generosity. Irrational generosity. Generosity that makes absolutely no sense. Generosity that leaves people saying, you shouldn't have. That's too much. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. I can't take that. It's too much. Irrational generosity. And my guess is you've been on both sides of this mite, where people have blessed you and you're lost for words, almost embarrassed. I mean, you don't know how to respond to being that valued by someone else that they would bless you in this way. And if you've ever been blessed, or if you've ever blessed someone in that way, my guess is you know that there is no greater feeling on the planet. To see the face of someone whose need you've met or prayer you've answered. And I believe we were created and called to model this type of generosity to the world, because it embodies the generosity of our Heavenly Father, that He would give His only Son. There's no greater level of generosity or demonstration of love than that. So as we go together to our tomorrow, our desire is that we continue to be defined by irrational generosity. We hope that as people are exposed to the ministry of our church, we hope that they would say, this is a generous church. They don't just take, they give. They give. And in order for that to be said of us collectively, it needs to be embraced by us individually. And the way that you can develop this value in your life is by asking yourself a simple question. What does love require of me? What does love require of me? See, Jesus said that the greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and to love our neighbor as ourselves. So, as we grow in our relationship with Him, we ask ourselves, what does love require of me? What does it require of me? To communicate love, I need to be a contributor, not a consumer. I need to be a contributor, not a consumer. I need to be irrationally generous with my time, my talent, and my treasure. As a church, we celebrate generosity instead of apologizing for it, excusing it, or dismissing it. Because Jesus didn't go up to that woman and tell her, you don't need to do that, it's okay. No, He celebrated it. Now, He didn't draw the crowd's attention to her, what she did, but to His disciples He did as a way of communicating to them. That is the way you should be. Again, not what she gave, but what she was communicating by what she gave. What if we were to be defined by that level of generosity? What if we were defined by that level of generosity? You shouldn't have. You didn't need to do that. Oh, I can't. All of us have said those words, maybe even heard them. But what if our life was meant to be defined by them? I believe it is. Jesus saw the poor widow's sacrifice, and He sees ours as well. And that's why we're called to faithfulness and sacrificial, irrational generosity. God is more concerned with the state of our hearts when we give than He is with the amount that we offer as a sacrifice as we give. So, today, as we continue on to our tomorrow together, let's be a community that communicates something internal with what we do externally. Let's be defined and described as irrationally generous. As we do that, ask yourself, what does this look like for me? What does it mean and look like for you and your family to sacrificially give to the work of God in and through His church? One of the ways we answer this and do this practically is week after week collectively contributing to the tangible, practical needs of this church, our church. It's kind of like when you jump in the car. You maybe remember days like this. You jump in the car and you're headed somewhere with your friends, and you can't all drive, and not everyone has a car even, but everyone in the car contributes, right? Do you remember those days? Everyone in the car pitched in gas money so that you could all get to where you're going together. See, as we talk about our church and where we're going as a church and our values as a church, during this series, we're going to ask everyone who calls the Bridge my church, we're going to ask everyone to pitch in some gas money. We're not asking everyone to contribute the same, because we can't all contribute the same. We're asking everyone to do something, and to do that something consistently. In just a few moments on the screens, you're going to find a QR code that you can scan with your phone. And this code will take you to a browser where you can download an app that we use here at the Bridge called Church Center. We use it all the time. And from there are a number of prompts that you can follow to set up an account and profiles for everyone in your family. This is our database, and we use it for a lot of different things. But this app also allows you to set up you and your family's giving to our church. My family does this. It's super easy. So if I can do it, you can do it. And whether our family, whether we're here on a Sunday, we're away at the lake, whether we're sick or on vacation, wherever we are, we can contribute no matter where we are. We as a family can pitch in to help us get to our tomorrow together, and I'm going to ask you to do the same. From now until the end of October, we have a goal of seeing 100 individuals or families commit to this type of recurring giving. Again, we can't all give or commit to the same amount, but if we all do something, we're modeling this widow's generosity. And I believe what we can do together will give us stories to tell for years to come. I want to thank you for what you can do and are going to do today. I promise you it means more, and more will come from it than you can possibly imagine. We're going to continue talking about where we're going as a church and who we are as we go there next week. But until then, for everything that you do and for everything you and your family do for the ministry of this church, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. We have so much to see and experience and accomplish and celebrate together. And I hope that you will continue to go with us as we go to our tomorrow. I'll see you next week. Much love, and God bless.
We worship the God who is. We worship the God who evermore will be. He opened the prison doors. He parted the raging sea. My God, He holds the victory. Yeah. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. And we won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in this place. And we won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. Oh, oh, oh. We shout out your praise. We sing to the God who heals. We sing to the God who saves. We sing to the God who always makes a way. 'Cause He hung upon that cross, then He rose up from that grave. My God, still rolling stones away. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. And we won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in this place. And we won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. 'Cause we were the beggars, now we're royalty. We were the prisoners, now we're running free. We are forgiven, accepted, redeemed by His grace. Let the house of the Lord sing praise. 'Cause we were the beggars, Now we're royalty. We were the prisoners. Now we're running free. We are forgiven, accepted, redeemed by His grace. Let the house of the Lord sing praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. And we won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in this place. And we won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. And we won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in this place. And we won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. 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 We shout out your praise.
Thank you for joining us this morning. As Scott mentioned in his sermon, we are looking for 100 families and individuals to sign up for reoccurring giving. My family has, and we'd never look back. And I'm not just saying that because I work here. I truly hope that you'll be able to join us as we get to our tomorrow together. And because of you, we can put on awesome events like our block party, which is happening next Sunday, October 2nd. It was postponed from September because of rain, but rest assured, we're gonna be set up and ready to go with bouncy castles, a Mario Kart tourney, and a barbecue for the whole family. I really hope that you can make it. But in the meantime, I hope that you have an amazing week. Much love, God bless, and we'll see you next week for part 3 of Changing Lanes.